In the coming days, I expect to speak with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov for the first time since the war began. I plan to raise an issue that's a top priority for us: the release of Americans Paul Whelan and Brittney Griner, who've been wrongfully detained and must be allowed to come home. We put a substantial proposal on the table weeks ago to facilitate their release. Our governments have communicated repeatedly and directly on that proposal. And I'll use the conversation to follow up personally and, I hope, move us toward a resolution.
It's very significant, first of all, that they said publicly, the Secretary of State said when he came into the room that they put a substantial proposal on the table. He didn't say what it was. He didn't even say it was a prisoner swap. I asked him right away, was it Victor Bout? And he said that they would not go into details. It's clearly what is happening. As Mike McFaul knows, and as he has been saying to me and publicly, that is a very, very big deal, because Victor Bout is a terrible criminal. He's an arms dealer. He's in a 25-year sentence. And what Mike McFaul said a couple of weeks ago when this trial first began was, if they do a deal for Victor Bout, it has to be a big deal. It has to include Paul Whelan. And he said Mark Fogel. Now, again, today, I asked the Secretary about Mark Fogel, and they're not talking about specifics. They're just not talking about particular people, but it's very clear. They have not mentioned Mark Fogel. They are mentioning Paul Whelan. They are mentioning Brittney Griner. He said it was going to be the first thing he talked about with Sergei Lavrov, which is significant because they have been shunning Lavrov. He shunned him in Indonesia, would not meet with him. He has not spoken to him since Russia's invasion. Their point was to isolate the Russian foreign minister around the world. And instead, they're seeing that Lavrov is touring Africa, blaming the U.S. for the food shortages because of the sanctions, even though the sanctions exempted Russian food exports. So they are up against it and under pressure, and it's very clear that the president has made a decision. I asked Bill Burns, the CIA director, in our exclusive interview in Aspen last week about trading Victor Bout, and he said these are very, very difficult things, and he called Victor Bout a creep, but said that the president will have to make that decision. I'm paraphrasing. And the president has clearly made a decision, and understandably, with Justice Department opposition, as Mike McFaul knows, who has made these deals in the past. The Justice Department, the FBI, are always upset about it. Their interest is in keeping a convicted criminal in jail and not encouraging other rogue nations like Russia, like Iran, to seize Americans, innocent Americans like Brittney Griner, like Paul Whelan, and hold them for even greater leverage when there is more publicity and when they understand they have higher value. But now they're obviously prepared to make this deal.